Have you ever felt trapped by your own thoughts? Do you find yourself overwhelmed by the constant chatter in your mind, the endless loop of worries, doubts, and fears? Do you ever wonder how to truly break free from the mental chains that bind you, to experience the freedom and peace that come from transcending your mind's limitations? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going to explore one of the most important questions on the path to personal and spiritual freedom: how to truly free yourself from the shackles of the mind. At the core of this exploration are two powerful insights. First, understanding that the mind is often the source of our suffering and limitations, and second, learning how to transcend the mind's grip by cultivating awareness, presence, and inner peace. This process of liberation is not just about silencing the mind, but about transcending the ego patterns and attachments that keep us trapped in cycles of suffering. Let's begin by acknowledging something important. Our minds are incredibly powerful. They shape our reality, influence our emotions, and dictate our actions. The thoughts we think, the beliefs we hold, and the stories we tell ourselves create the lens through which we view the world. And while this power can be a force for good, it can also be the very thing that keeps us stuck. Consider how often we find ourselves trapped in negative thought patterns. We worry about the future, regret the past, and replay old conversations or imagine scenarios in our heads. These thoughts come and go, but when we identify with them, they begin to define us. They shape our sense of self, our sense of worth, and even our ability to experience joy. This is the first step in becoming aware of how the mind traps us, recognizing that the thoughts we experience are not who we are. The mind often creates stories, and these stories can become the foundation of our identity. For example, you might have an ongoing narrative in your mind that tells you, "I am not good enough," or "I will never succeed." These stories become ingrained in the way we think and act, shaping our behaviors, interactions, and decisions. But the key to liberation is understanding that these stories are not truths, they are simply mental constructions. To truly free ourselves from the shackles of the mind, we must begin by disidentifying from these stories. We are not our thoughts. We are not the narratives our minds create. This is a liberating realization because it allows us to step outside of the limited identity the mind has constructed for us. How do we begin this process of disidentification? The first step is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of becoming aware of our thoughts and emotions without judgment. When we practice mindfulness, we learn to observe our thoughts as they arise, rather than being swept away by them. Instead of becoming attached to a thought or belief, we simply notice it and let it pass. For example, if the thought, "I am not good enough," rises, mindfulness helps us recognize it as just a thought, not a fact. We can acknowledge it, but we don't need to internalize it or act on it. This practice of mindfulness is essential for breaking free from the mind's grip. It helps us to see that thoughts are transient and impermanent. They come and go, but they do not define us. When we create space between ourselves and our thoughts, we begin to experience a deeper sense of freedom. We no longer feel like we are at the mercy of our mental patterns. Another important aspect of freeing ourselves from the shackles of the mind is learning to live in the present moment. The mind loves to dwell on the past or project into the future, but true freedom lies in the now. When we focus on the present moment, we step outside of the mind's endless chatter. We experience life as it is, without the filter of judgment or expectation. This is not to say that the mind won't continue to produce thoughts. It will, but when we bring our attention to the present, we can break the cycle of overthinking and anxiety. Living in the present moment doesn't mean ignoring the past or the future. It means not being ruled by them. We acknowledge the past for the lessons it has taught us, and we plan for the future with intention and mindfulness, but we do not let these things dominate our lives. By learning to live in the present, we reconnect with the essence of life itself, which is always unfolding in the here and now. The next step in freeing ourselves from the mind's shackles is cultivating inner peace. Inner peace is the space of stillness and silence that exists beyond the constant activity of the mind. When we are at peace within ourselves, we are no longer controlled by the fluctuations of our thoughts and emotions. We experience a deep sense of calm, no matter what is happening around us. Cultivating inner peace is a practice, one that requires patience and dedication. It can be developed through practices like meditation, yoga, or simply taking time each day to sit in silence and connect with your inner stillness. Meditation is particularly powerful because it trains the mind to quiet itself. As we meditate, we create space between ourselves and our thoughts, allowing us to observe them without getting caught up in them. Over time, this practice strengthens our ability to remain calm and centered, even in the midst of external chaos. But inner peace is not just about silence or stillness, it is about acceptance. Acceptance of ourselves, of our thoughts, of our emotions, and of the present moment. When we accept what is, rather than resisting it, we release the tension that comes from constantly striving for something different. We stop fighting against the flow of life, and instead, we begin to flow with it. This acceptance is the foundation of true freedom. Another aspect of inner peace is compassion. When we are caught in the shackles of the mind, we often judge ourselves harshly. We criticize our thoughts, our actions, and our emotions, believing that they are wrong or unworthy. But compassion allows us to step outside of this self-judgment. It teaches us to treat ourselves with kindness and understanding, rather than with criticism and condemnation. When we approach ourselves with compassion, we create an environment in which healing and growth can occur. Compassion is also key in our relationships with others. The mind often creates separation and division. It labels people as good or bad, as right or wrong. But when we practice compassion, we see others as they truly are, human beings, just like ourselves, struggling with their own thoughts and emotions. Compassion helps us to let go of the need to judge others and to embrace them with love and understanding. It is through compassion that we break down the walls that the mind builds between us and others, creating deeper, more authentic connections. Ultimately, the key to freeing yourself from the shackles of the mind is to recognize that you are not your mind. You are not the thoughts, the emotions, or the stories that the mind creates. You are the awareness behind them, the observer of your own experience. When you identify with this awareness, you step into a space of limitless potential. You are no longer bound by the limitations of your thoughts and beliefs. You are free to create a new reality. This realization is the gateway to liberation. It is the key to living a life of peace, joy, and authenticity. When we free ourselves from the shackles of the mind, we tap into a deeper wisdom and a higher truth. We experience life not as a series of problems to be solved, but as an unfolding journey to be embraced. As we continue to explore the path toward freeing ourselves from the shackles of the mind, let's take a moment to understand the role of fear in keeping us trapped. Fear is perhaps one of the most powerful forces that the mind uses to control us. It is a survival mechanism, designed to protect us from danger, but when it becomes rooted in the mind and begins to govern our thoughts and actions, it can imprison us. Fear can limit our potential, keep us stuck in old patterns, and prevent us from living the life we truly desire. The most insidious aspect of fear is that it often masquerades as something else. It might present itself as self-doubt, anxiety, or the avoidance of discomfort. But at its core, fear is a belief in the worst possible outcome. We fear failure, we fear rejection, we fear the unknown, and in doing so, we create mental barriers that stop us from taking risks or embracing new opportunities. One of the most profound realizations on the journey to freedom is that fear is an illusion. While it may feel very real in the moment, fear is just a mental construct. It often arises from past experiences or imagined future scenarios, neither of which can be fully trusted. The past is gone, and the future hasn't yet arrived. So, what we are really afraid of is an illusion, the projection of our minds onto reality. When we can recognize that fear is not based in the present moment, we can start to let go of its power over us. The first step in overcoming fear is to face it directly. This might sound counterintuitive, but in truth, avoiding fear only strengthens its grip. The more we try to run from fear, the more it follows us. Instead, we must confront our fears with awareness. When we feel fear arising, we can simply observe it, acknowledge that it's there without judgment. We can ask ourselves, what am I really afraid of? And examine the story that the mind has created around that fear. Often, when we bring fear into the light of awareness, we see that it is much less intimidating than we initially thought. Mindfulness plays a crucial role in this process. When we practice mindfulness, we bring ourselves into the present moment, where fear cannot exist. Fear thrives in the past and the future, but in the present, it loses its power. By training ourselves to be present, we create a space where fear cannot control us. We begin to understand that fear is just a thought, and thoughts are temporary. They come and go, and we have the power to choose which ones we align with. One of the most effective ways to confront fear is through exposure. This doesn't mean recklessly throwing ourselves into situations that trigger fear, but it does mean gently pushing past the boundaries the mind has created. For example, if you're afraid of public speaking, the more you avoid it, the more fear it will generate. But if you gradually expose yourself to speaking in front of small groups or even practicing in front of a mirror, you begin to break the cycle of avoidance. With each small step, the fear becomes less and less powerful until it no longer controls you. This process of gradual exposure is not limited to external fears. It can also apply to the internal fears we hold about ourselves. Perhaps you fear failure, not just in the eyes of others, but in your own judgment. You might fear that you are not good enough, or that you don't have the capacity to succeed. These internal fears are often even more limiting because they become part of our self-identity. But just like with external fears, we can begin to challenge these beliefs by slowly exposing ourselves to situations where we might fail or make mistakes, and learning to embrace them with compassion. Another important realization in overcoming fear is that fear and excitement are often two sides of the same coin. When we feel fear, we are usually on the verge of growth, of stepping into something new or unknown. The body's response to fear and excitement is physiologically similar: increased heart rate, butterflies in the stomach, heightened awareness. The difference lies in how we interpret these sensations. Instead of labeling them as fear, we can choose to label them as excitement. When we view fear as excitement, we transform our relationship with it and use it as fuel to move forward. This shift in perspective is a powerful tool in freeing ourselves from the mind's limitations. Instead of seeing fear as something to be avoided, we begin to see it as a signal that we are on the right path. Fear often arises when we are pushing past the boundaries of what we know, and in that moment, we have the opportunity to transcend those boundaries and grow. But let's take this a step further. Even after we've confronted and transformed our fears, the mind can still keep us trapped in other ways. One of the most subtle forms of mental bondage is the need for control. The mind loves to control, whether it's our circumstances, our relationships, or our own thoughts. But the truth is, control is an illusion. We cannot control everything, and the more we try, the more frustrated we become. The need for control is often rooted in a fear of the unknown. When we feel uncertain or insecure, our minds try to impose order, to make things predictable. But this need for control creates a false sense of safety, And in doing so, it prevents us from experiencing life as it is: unpredictable, messy, and beautiful. The key to breaking free from this need for control is to cultivate surrender. Surrender is not about giving up or resigning yourself to helplessness. It is about letting go of the need to control every outcome and trusting in the flow of life. Surrender is the practice of accepting what is, knowing that even in the face of uncertainty, we are safe. It is the willingness to be present with life as it unfolds, without trying to manipulate it. This doesn't mean we stop making decisions or taking action. It means we stop gripping so tightly to the idea that we can control everything. When we surrender, we open ourselves to the possibilities of life, allowing the universe to guide us instead of trying to force things to go our way. This shift in mindset creates a sense of ease and peace, because we no longer have to fight against the flow of life. Surrender is closely connected to the practice of trust. When we trust, we release our fears and doubts, knowing that we are supported by something greater than ourselves. Whether you call it the universe, divine wisdom, or your higher self, trust allows you to step into the unknown with confidence and grace. It is the belief that everything is unfolding as it should, even if we don't always understand the bigger picture. This trust is the antidote to the mind's need for control. When we let go of our need to dictate every outcome, we create the space for life to surprise us, to present us with new opportunities and experiences that we never could have imagined. And in that space, we find true freedom. By now, you might begin to see how freedom from the mind is not about silencing the thoughts or banishing the fears. It is about shifting our relationship with them. Instead of letting them control us, we learn to observe them, understand them, and transcend them. We recognize that we are the awareness behind the thoughts, not the thoughts themselves. And with this realization, we experience the freedom that comes from being fully present, fully alive, and fully ourselves. As we move forward on this path to freedom, it's important to remember that this is not a destination, it's a journey. Each step we take, each insight we gain, brings us closer to our true nature. The shackles of the mind are not broken in one moment, they are slowly loosened over time, through practice, patience, and self-compassion. I want to hear from you. How has fear kept you trapped in your life? And how have you begun to break free from it? What practices or experiences have helped you transcend the limitations of the mind? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. Let's continue this conversation and support one another on our journey to true freedom. Thank you for watching this video.